The ashes of Snow Polo had not yet cooled when humanity began its transformation. Across the world, ancient enemies looked at each other and saw not rivals but brothers and sisters united by grief and rage. Within 72 hours of the attack, every nation on Earth signed the Terran Compact. Governments that had threatened nuclear war against each other now shared their deepest secrets. Armies that had faced each other across borders now trained side by side. Elena Vasquez stood before the new Terran Council, her voice carrying the weight of 14 million souls. "They gave us 30 days, she declared. "They expect us to spend those days in fear, arguing among ourselves, and finally crawling to them on our knees." She slammed her fist on the podium. "They do not know us." The representatives of 200 nations rose to their feet with thunderous applause. For the first time in human history, the species spoke with one voice. General James Okonkwo stepped forward. He was a tall man from Nigeria, with gray in his hair and fire in his eyes, and he had spent 40 years preparing for wars he hoped would never come. "Madam Secretary," he said with barely contained excitement, "there is something you need to see." He led her and a small group of trusted officials to a heavily guarded aircraft. They flew south for hours until they reached the frozen wastes of Antarctica. Deep beneath the ice, past 17 security checkpoints and 3 miles of frozen tunnels, Elena Vasquez discovered humanity's greatest secret. It was a ship, but unlike any ship humans had ever built. Its hull was made of metals that seemed to drink light, and strange symbols covered every surface. "We found it in 2089, explained Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the lead scientist of the project. She was a small woman with tired eyes and brilliant mind. A derelict alien vessel buried under the ice for at least 50,000 years. Elena walked around the massive craft in stunned silence. "Why was I never told about this?" "The Prometheus Protocol?" General Okonkwo replied. "Every Secretary General since the discovery decided to keep it hidden until we understood what we had found. We feared what might happen if the world learned aliens existed." Dr. Tanaka led them inside the ship. The corridors were strange and beautiful, designed for beings quite different from humans, but her team had studied every inch. "The species that built this ship were not the Valorians," she explained. "We believe they were at war with something terrible, something that destroyed their entire civilization." She stopped before a massive door covered in warning symbols. "But before they died, they created a weapon." The door opened to reveal a chamber containing a device of terrifying beauty. It pulsed with energy that made the air vibrate and the skin tingle. "We call it the Scouring Light," Dr. Tanaka whispered with awe and fear in her voice. "According to the records we translated, it can ignite the very atoms of a star, turning it into a weapon of unimaginable destruction." Elena stared at the device with wide eyes. "Why did they never use it?" "The records say they were afraid," Dr. Tanaka replied. "They built it as a last resort, but could not bring themselves to use such terrible power." She paused and looked at Elena with haunted eyes. "There is one more thing you should know. Activating the weapon will kill everyone within 3 light minutes of the device. It is a suicide weapon." Silence filled the chamber as the weight of this knowledge settled on their shoulders. Elena Vasquez thought of Snow Polo, of 14 million innocent people erased in an instant of the High Arbiter's cruel laughter. She thought of her daughter who had died in that city, of all the children who would never grow up. "Can you build another one?" she asked. Dr. Tanaka nodded slowly. "We have spent 60 years studying this technology. Yes, we can build one." "Then build it," Elena commanded. "And build a ship to carry it." The next 25 days were a blur of activity unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Every factory on Earth and Mars shifted to military production. Every scientist bent their genius toward one goal. They called the new ship the Nemesis, named for the ancient goddess of divine punishment. It was a dreadnought 3 miles long, built from human steel and alien technology woven together. Commander James Okonkwo was chosen to lead the mission. When asked for volunteers, over 10 million people applied. They selected 12,000 of the bravest and most skilled. Every crew member understood the truth. This was a one-way journey. They would likely never see Earth again. They would never hold their loved ones or watch another sunset over their home. And yet they volunteered without hesitation because they knew what was at stake. Intelligence officers captured a Valorian scout who had stayed behind to monitor Earth. Under interrogation, the alien revealed the coordinates of Valoria Prime, the heart of the Galactic Council. On the 28th day, the Nemesis was complete. It hung in orbit above Earth like a blade of vengeance, bristling with weapons and carrying the scouring light in its heart. Elena Vasquez spoke to the crew one final time before their departure. "The universe thinks humanity is weak," she told them. "They think we will break under pressure, that we will kneel when threatened, that we will accept chains because we fear death." Her voice rose with power and conviction. "But they are wrong. We are the children of a world that tried to kill us with ice ages and plagues and disasters beyond counting, and we survived them all." The crew stood at attention, their faces hard with determination. "You carry the hopes of our species," she continued. "You carry the memory of 14 million souls crying out for justice. You carry Earth's answer to those who would make us slaves." She saluted them with tears in her eyes. "Godspeed, brave warriors. Make them remember." Commander Okonkwo gave the order, and the Nemesis began to move. Its engines blazed with power as it accelerated toward the distant stars. On the hull of the ship, painted in the actual ashes of Snow Paulo, were the words that would become legend. "Remember the 14 million." Billions of people across Earth and Mars watched as the Nemesis shrank to a point of light and then vanished into the darkness of space. Some wept with fear for the brave souls aboard. Others wept with pride. Many fell to their knees and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. Elena Vasquez watched until the ship was gone from sight. Then she turned back to her work. There was much to do. Earth must be fortified in case the mission failed. Defenses must be built, shelters must be dug, and the population must be prepared for the possibility of extinction. But deep in her heart, she believed the Nemesis would succeed. She believed humanity would have its vengeance. The galaxy would learn what happened when you pushed humanity too far. The year was 2147, and humanity believed they were alone in the universe. They had colonized Mars, built outposts on Europa, and sent probes to distant stars, but they had never found proof of other life forms in the vast darkness of space. That changed on a cold November morning when the sky above Earth turned black with ships. Secretary General Elena Vasquez stood on the balcony of the United Earth Council headquarters in Geneva, watching thousands of alien vessels descend through the clouds. Each ship was larger than any building humans had ever constructed, and their hulls gleamed with metals that did not exist on Earth. "How many ships do you count?" she asked her military advisor, General Marcus Chun. "Over 12,000 vessels, Madam Secretary," he replied with a voice that could not hide his fear. "Our satellites show more arriving every minute." The people of Earth watched in terror and wonder as the alien fleet positioned itself in orbit. News channels broadcast images of the massive ships to every corner of the planet, and billions of humans looked up at the sky with questions in their hearts. 3 days passed before the aliens made contact. A single shuttle descended from the largest vessel and landed in the plaza outside the United Earth Council building. The shuttle door opened and out stepped creatures that humanity had only imagined in their wildest dreams. High Arbiter Zyrith Kolvan was the leader of the delegation. He stood 9 feet tall with an insectoid body covered in gleaming black armor, and his 4 eyes burned with an ancient intelligence. Behind him walked representatives of 11 other species, each more strange and terrifying than the last. Elena Vasquez walked forward to greet them, her heart pounding in her chest, but her face showing nothing but calm dignity. She extended her hand in the universal human gesture of peace. "Welcome to Earth," she said in a clear voice. "I am Elena Vasquez, leader of the United Earth Council, and I speak for all humanity." The High Arbiter looked at her tiny hand and made a sound that might have been laughter. His translators turned his clicking speech into words that all could understand. "You speak for your species?" he asked with amusement dripping from every word. How charming that such young creatures have managed to organize themselves at all. Elena kept her composure even as insult burned in her chest. She had dealt with arrogant politicians her entire career, and this alien was no different. "We have prepared a welcome ceremony," she said with diplomatic grace. "Perhaps we could discuss the purpose of your visit in more comfortable surroundings." The High Arbiter waved one of his 4 arms in dismissal. "There is no need for ceremony, little creature. I will state our purpose here and now so that all may hear." He turned to face the cameras that broadcast his image across the world. Billions of humans watched as the alien spoke words that would change everything. "I am High Arbiter Zereth Colvin of the Valorian hegemony," he announced with pride that echoed through centuries of conquest. "We are a coalition of 12 species that rules 1/3 of this galaxy, and we have watched your kind for many generations." Elena felt cold dread creeping up her spine, but she forced herself to listen. "You have reached a level of development that makes you useful to us," the Arbiter continued. "Therefore, we offer you a great honor. Humanity may join the hegemony as a servitor species." Murmurs of confusion spread through the crowd of human officials. Elena stepped forward with steel in her voice. "What exactly does servitor species mean?" she demanded. The Arbiter's mandibles clicked in what seemed to be a smile. "You will serve the elder races as laborers and soldiers for 500 of your years. This is the doctrine of primacy that all young species must follow. After you have proven your worth through service, you may petition for higher standing." Silence fell over the plaza as the weight of his words sank in. He was offering humanity nothing less than slavery. Elena Vasquez stood tall despite the fear that gripped her heart. She looked the towering alien directly in his 4 burning eyes. "The people of Earth thank you for your offer," she said with ice in her voice. "But we must respectfully decline. Humanity does not serve, and humanity does not kneel. We would instead propose an alliance of equals." For a long moment, the High Arbiter stared at her in what seemed to be genuine shock. Then he threw back his head and laughed, a horrible clicking sound that made human skin crawl. "You decline?" he asked with disbelief. "You propose equality with the elder races?" He laughed again and shook his massive head. "Little creature, you do not understand your position. This is not a negotiation." He raised 1 arm and spoke into a device wrapped around his wrist. "Fleet Command, execute demonstration protocol on the following coordinates." Elena felt her blood turn to ice. "What are you doing?" "I am teaching you humility," the Arbiter replied with casual cruelty. High above Earth, one of the alien warships powered its weapons. A beam of blinding light shot down from orbit and struck the city of São Paulo, Brazil. In an instant, 14 million human beings ceased to exist. The entire city vanished in a flash of fire and radiation, leaving nothing but a crater of glass and ash. Screams erupted across the world as people watched the destruction on their screens. Elena Vasquez fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she witnessed the murder of millions. The High Arbiter looked down at her with cold satisfaction. "That was a lesson," he said without remorse. "You have 30 of your solar days to accept our terms. When we return, you will kneel and pledge your service to the hegemony. Or we will reduce every city on your world to ash." He turned and walked back to his shuttle, his delegation following behind him. The ship rose into the sky and rejoined the massive fleet. One by one, the alien vessels activated their engines and vanished into the darkness of space, leaving humanity alone with their grief and their rage. Elena Vasquez knelt in the plaza for a long time, her tears falling onto the cold stone. Around her, people wept and screamed and held each other in despair. But when she finally rose to her feet, there were no more tears in her eyes. There was only cold fury, burning like a star in her chest. She looked up at the sky where the alien ships had disappeared and spoke words that would echo through history. They have no idea what they have awakened. The Nemesis sailed through the darkness between stars, carrying 12,000 human souls toward a destiny written in fire and blood. Commander James Okonkwo stood on the bridge and watched the stars streak past. The alien technology they had integrated into the ship allowed them to travel faster than anything humans had ever built. But the journey to Valoria Prime would still take 18 long months. "Status report," he called out. Lieutenant Sarah Chun, his second-in-command, checked her displays. "All systems functioning within normal parameters, Commander. Crew morale is high." Okonkwo nodded with grim satisfaction. He had expected fear and doubt among his people, but instead he found only determination. They knew they were flying toward almost certain death, and they embraced it. For the first 3 months, the journey was quiet. The Nemesis passed through empty space, far from any hegemony worlds or patrol routes. Daruyuki Tanaka spent her days studying the scouring light, trying to understand every detail of its terrible power. She and her team of scientists worked around the clock, making sure the weapon would function when the time came. The crew trained constantly, running simulations of every possible battle scenario. They knew they would face the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, and they had to be ready. On the bridge one day, Lieutenant Chun picked up strange signals on her sensors. "Commander," she reported with tension in her voice, "I am detecting 200 hegemony vessels on intercept course." Okonkwo studied the tactical display with calm focus. The enemy ships were arranged in a standard patrol formation, confident in their overwhelming numbers. "They must have detected our energy signature," he said. "Battle stations." Alarms rang throughout the Nemesis as 12,000 crew members rushed to their posts. Weapons powered up and shields activated. The hegemony fleet surrounded them, and a harsh voice crackled over the communications channel. "Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Commander Crix of the Valorian Hegemony," the alien announced. "You are trespassing in our territory. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Okonkwo activated his own communicator. "This is Commander James Okonkwo of the Terran vessel Nemesis. We will not surrender, and we will not stop. If you want to destroy us, you are welcome to try." He cut the channel before the alien could respond. "All hands," he announced to his crew. "Today we show the galaxy what humans are made of. Fight well, and may God be with us all." The battle began with a storm of energy beams and missiles. The hegemony fleet attacked from all directions, confident that their numbers would bring quick victory. But they did not understand what they faced. The Nemesis had been built with the best of human engineering and alien technology. Its shields absorbed blows that should have been fatal. Its weapons struck with precision that seemed impossible. And there was something else, something the aliens had never encountered: adaptive combat intelligence. Daisha Tanaka had programmed the ship's computers to learn from every attack, to analyze enemy tactics in real time and develop countermeasures instantly. Within minutes, the computers understood how the hegemony ships fought. Within an hour, they had found weaknesses in their formations. "Fire pattern Delta 7, Okonkwo ordered. The Nemesis unleashed a coordinated barrage, that tore through enemy shields and ripped apart their hulls. Ship after ship exploded in brilliant fireballs. But victory came at a terrible cost. Despite their superior technology, the humans could not avoid all damage. Enemy weapons found their marks, and sections of the Nemesis were destroyed. Lieutenant Chun reported the casualties with pain in her voice. "We have lost 40% of the crew, Commander. Decks 7 through 12 are gone." Okonkwo closed his eyes for a moment, mourning the brave souls who had given their lives. Then he opened them again with renewed determination. "Continue the attack," he ordered. The battle raged for 6 more hours. When it was finally over, 200 hegemony ships had been reduced to floating wreckage. The Nemesis limped away from the battlefield, badly damaged but still alive. Of the 12,000 crew members who had left Earth, only 5,000 remained. Across the galaxy, hegemony communications networks exploded with panicked messages. For the first time in 10,000 years, a lesser species had defeated their forces in open combat. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session on Valoria Prime. High Arbiter Zyrith Kolvan could not believe the reports he was receiving. "One ship?" he demanded. "One primitive human ship destroyed 200 of our vessels?" His advisors cowered before his rage. "The reports are confirmed, High Arbiter. The human vessel is still advancing toward our space." Zyrith slammed his fist on the council table. "Then send a real fleet. I want 5,000 ships to intercept and destroy these insects." The order was given, and the largest armada in hegemony history began to assemble. Meanwhile, on the Nemesis, Dr. Tanaka called Commander Okonkwo to her laboratory with urgent news. "I have discovered something about the scouring light," she said with a grave expression. "Something the original builders did not include in their main records." She showed him her findings on a display screen. The weapon does not simply ignite a star. It creates a focused beam of destruction that can be aimed at specific targets within a solar system. Okonkwo nodded. "That is good news. We can target the council itself." "Yes," Dr. Tanaka agreed. "But there is more." She pulled up another set of data. Activating the weapon will release radiation that is instantly fatal to all organic life within 3 light minutes. Anyone aboard the Nemesis will die the moment it fires. The commander absorbed this information in silence. He had always known this might be a one-way mission, but now there was certainty. "How long do we have after activation?" he asked. "Seconds," Dr. Tanaka replied. "Perhaps less." Okonkwo took a deep breath and made his decision. "We continue the mission. I will ask for volunteers to remain aboard for final deployment." That evening, he assembled what remained of the crew and told them the truth. He explained the weapon and its cost. He told them he needed people to stay with the ship until the very end. "I will not order anyone to do this," he said. "This must be a choice." He asked those willing to stay to step forward. Every single surviving crew member stepped forward. Okonkwo felt tears burn in his eyes as he looked at their determined faces. These were the bravest humans who had ever lived. "Then we go together," he declared. "All of us to the end." The Nemesis continued its journey, battered and burning but unbroken. Ahead lay the Valorian system and the greatest battle in human history. High Arbiter Zyrith Kolvan watched from his palace as reports of the approaching human ship filled his screens. 5,000 of his finest warships moved to intercept. For the first time in his long life, he felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Doubt. What manner of creatures were these humans, who fought against impossible odds and refused to die? He pushed the feeling aside. They were insects, nothing more. His armada would crush them. But deep in his heart, a small voice whispered that he had made a terrible mistake. The Valorian system was the heart of the Galactic Council, the center of power for 12 species who had ruled a third of the galaxy for 10,000 years. At its core burned a yellow star much like Earth's sun. Orbiting that star was Valoria Prime, a world of endless cities and towering spires where the masters of the galaxy made their home. And between that world and the Nemesis stood the largest fleet ever assembled in the history of the hegemony. 5,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet. Commander James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of his battered dreadnought and surveyed the enemy forces. They outnumbered him 1,000 to 1, and his ship was already falling apart. "Well," he said with a grim smile, "they certainly took us seriously this time." Lieutenant Chen laughed despite the terror in her heart. "I count it as a compliment, Commander." The surviving crew of 3,000 souls manned their stations with steady hands. They knew what was coming, and they were not afraid. High Arbiter Zereth Kolvan watched from the Council Spire on Valoria Prime as the human ship approached. Around him sat the leaders of 12 species, the greatest minds and most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Look at it," sneered Admiral Vex, the hegemony's supreme military commander. "One ship against 5,000. They must be insane." "Perhaps," the High Arbiter replied, but his eyes were troubled. "Or perhaps we have underestimated them from the beginning." He activated his communicator and broadcast a message to the human vessel. "This is High Arbiter Zereth Kolvan," he announced. "You have impressed us with your courage, humans. Surrender now, and I will spare your lives. You may serve the hegemony as warriors rather than laborers." Commander Okonkwo listened to the offer and felt cold fury rise in his chest. He remembered Snow Paulo, remembered 14 million souls erased in an instant, remembered the Arbiter's cruel laughter. He opened his own channel and broadcast his response to every ship and every world in the system. "This is Commander James Okonkwo of the Terran vessel Nemesis," he declared. "You came to our world. You murdered our children. You offered us chains." His voice rose with righteous anger. "We do not kneel. We do not forget. We do not forgive. This is Earth's answer." He cut the channel and gave his orders. "All power to engines. Take us straight through their fleet." The Nemesis surged forward with every ounce of power its damaged engines could produce. Enemy weapons fire filled the space around it, tearing at its hull and burning away its armor. But the ship would not die. Dr. Yuki Tanaka worked frantically in the engine room, rerouting power and repairing critical systems. She had not slept in 3 days, but she would not rest until the mission was complete. "Tanaka to bridge," she reported. "The scouring light is fully charged and ready to fire." "Understood," Okonkwo replied. "How close do we need to get to the star?" 3 million kilometers, she answered. "Any closer and the weapon might destabilize before we can aim it." The Nemesis plunged into the heart of the enemy fleet, weapons blazing in all directions. For every enemy ship they destroyed, 10 more took its place. Explosions rocked the dreadnought as entire sections were torn away. Crew members died at their posts, their last breaths spent fighting for humanity. Lieutenant Chen reported the losses with a voice growing hoarse. "Decks 1 through 4 are gone. We have lost 60% of remaining crew. Shields are failing." "Hold together," Okonkwo commanded. "Just a little longer." The Valorian sun grew larger in the view screen, its golden light filling the bridge. They were getting close. High Arbiter Zereth Kolvan watched in growing horror as the impossible happened. The human ship broke through his armada, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "They are heading for the sun." Admiral Vex studied the tactical display with confusion. "Perhaps they are trying to use the star's gravity to escape." But the Arbiter felt a terrible certainty growing in his gut. "No," he whispered. "They are not trying to escape." He remembered the derelict ship that humanity had found, the ancient vessel from a species that had disappeared millions of years ago. It remembered the legends of a weapon so terrible that its creators had chosen extinction rather than use it. "All ships, destroy that vessel now," he screamed. "Stop them at any cost." But it was too late. The Nemesis reached the threshold, 3 million kilometers from the Valorian sun. The ship was barely holding together, more fire than metal, crewed by ghosts and heroes. Commander Okonkwo spoke one last time to his crew. "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve with you," he said. "Today we die, but humanity will live. Today we fall, but the galaxy will remember. Today we answer those who thought us weak." He paused and looked around at the brave faces of his remaining crew. "See you on the other side, my friends." He turned to Dr. Tanaka. "Fire the weapon." In the heart of the Nemesis, the scouring light awakened. Energy beyond human comprehension flowed through its ancient systems. Reality itself seemed to scream as the device activated. A beam of pure annihilation shot from the Nemesis into the heart of the Valorian sun. The star shuddered and then began to change. On Valoria Prime, High Arbiter Zereth Kolvan watched as his sun twisted and warped, changing from yellow to blinding white. He understood at last what the humans had done. "They have turned our star into a weapon," he whispered with horror. The sun exploded, but not in a random burst of destruction. The scouring light focused the stellar energy into a beam aimed directly at Valoria Prime. A wall of fire moving at the speed of light swept across the system. First the inner planets vanished, then the moons, then the orbital stations and shipyards. High Arbiter Zereth Kolvan had one final moment of clarity before the fire reached him. He saw the faces of his fellow council members, the leaders of 12 species who had ruled the galaxy with arrogance and cruelty for 10,000 years. He saw the council spire, repository of 1,000,000 years of knowledge and culture. He saw Valoria Prime, homeworld of his species, where billions of his kind had lived and loved and dreamed. And then he saw only fire. The scouring light consumed everything in the Valorian system. The council, the fleet, the worlds, the history, all of it reduced to atoms in an instant. When the light finally faded, there was nothing left but an expanding cloud of debris where once the heart of a galactic empire had beaten. 3,000 human beings died on the Nemesis when the weapon fired. They died in an instant, without pain, their mission complete. Their last sight was the golden light of a weaponized star. Their last thought was of the home they had saved. Across the galaxy, hegemony worlds received the news with disbelief and terror. Valoria Prime was gone. The council was gone. Their entire leadership had been erased by a species they had dismissed as primitive insects. Fear spread like wildfire through the stars. Every species in the hegemony looked at their own suns and wondered if they would be next. On Earth, the message arrived several weeks later. The mission had succeeded. The Nemesis crew had given their lives, but they had destroyed the heart of the enemy. Secretary General Elena Vasquez wept when she heard the news. She wept for the brave souls who had sacrificed everything, and she wept for the terrible price of victory. But she also felt something else rising in her chest, hope. Humanity had faced annihilation and refused to kneel. They had challenged an empire and reduced it to ashes. They had proven to the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. The war was not over. There would be years of conflict ahead as the hegemony struggled to respond. But the council that had ordered the death of 14 million innocents was gone, and humanity had delivered its answer. "Rest in peace," Elena whispered to the stars where the Nemesis crew had died. "You will never be forgotten." 10 years had passed since the scouring, and the galaxy was a different place. The Valorian hegemony that had ruled a third of the Milky Way was no more. Without the council to coordinate them, the 12-member species had fractured into dozens of warring factions. 3 of those species went extinct in the chaos that followed. Their worlds burned in civil wars as different leaders fought for control. Their populations scattered to the stars as refugees. The doctrine of primacy, the cruel law that had demanded 500 years of servitude from younger species, died with the council that created it. No one dared speak of it anymore. And at the center of all this change stood humanity, small in numbers, but vast in reputation. Earth had transformed in the decades since the Nemesis departed. The planet was now a fortress world, ringed with defense platforms and protected by fleets of warships. The Dr. Yuki Tanaka's research teams had worked tirelessly to improve upon the technology salvaged from Project Prometheus. They had created smaller, refined versions of the scouring light that could be carried by individual warships. The Terran fleet now numbered 300 vessels, each one capable of destroying a star. It was a power that no species in the galaxy could match. But humanity had not become the monsters their enemies feared. They had not used their terrible weapons to conquer and enslave. Instead, they had chosen a different path. Elena Vasquez, now president of the Terran Compact, stood before a delegation of alien ambassadors in the rebuilt city of New Snow Paulo. The ambassadors represented species who had not participated in the destruction of the original city. Some had even spoken against the attack in the old council, though their voices had been ignored. They came now with fear in their hearts, expecting demands of tribute and submission. After all, was that not what the strong always demanded from the weak? But Elena surprised them with her words. "We did not seek power over others," she declared. "We sought only to survive and to protect our children. We have no desire to become the tyrants that we destroyed." The ambassadors looked at each other in confusion. This was not what they had expected. "We offer you something the old hegemony never did," Elena continued. "True partnership, equality. A place at the table where decisions are made." She spread her arms wide. "We will share our technology and our knowledge. We will defend those who cannot defend themselves. And we will never, ever demand that anyone kneel." The Corellian ambassador, a gentle being from a species that had suffered greatly under hegemony rule, stepped forward with tears in her large eyes. "Why?" she asked with genuine wonder. "You have the power to take anything you want. Why would you give instead?" Elena smiled sadly. "Because we know what it feels like to be powerless," she replied. "We know the terror of facing a cruel enemy who sees you as nothing more than insects to be crushed. We will not inflict that terror on others." Over the following months, a new coalition began to form. They called it the Terran Accord, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Species joined not because they were forced, but because they chose to. They came seeking protection and partnership, and they found both. Humanity shared its technology freely, helping other worlds build defenses and develop their industries. They asked for nothing in return except friendship and cooperation. Worlds that had been stripped of resources by the hegemony began to recover. Species that had been treated as slaves discovered what it meant to be free. And everywhere they went, humans carried with them a lesson. Kindness was not weakness, and mercy did not mean surrender. On Mars, a memorial had been built to honor the heroes of the Nemesis. It stood on a red plain under a pink sky, a tower of black stone reaching toward the stars. The names of the crew were carved into its surface, all 12,000 brave souls who had given their lives to save humanity. At the base of the tower were the words Commander Okonkwo had spoken before the final battle. "We did not seek the stars to kneel before them." President Vasquez visited the memorial on the 10th anniversary of the scouring. She placed flowers at the base of the tower and spent a long time reading the names. Her daughter's name was not on this memorial. Maria Vasquez had died in Snow Paulo, one of 14 million victims whose names filled a different monument on Earth. But Elena liked to think that Maria would have been proud of what humanity had become. Not conquerors, not tyrants, but protectors and partners. A young Krellian girl approached her hesitantly. The child was part of a school group visiting the memorial, learning about the history that had shaped their galaxy. "Excuse me," the girl said in careful English. "May I ask you a question?" Elena smiled warmly. "Of course you may. Why are the other species so afraid of humans?" The girl asked with innocent curiosity. "You seem very nice to me." Elena knelt down to meet the child's eyes. She thought for a long moment about how to answer. "We are nice," she said finally. "We want to be friends with everyone, and we hate violence and war." She paused and her expression grew more serious. "But there was a time when others tried to hurt us, tried to make us their slaves. They killed many of our people and thought we would simply accept it." The girl listened with wide eyes. "We showed them that kindness is not the same as weakness," Elena continued. "We showed them that peaceful people can still fight back when they must. And we showed them what happens when you push humanity too far." The girl thought about this for a moment. "So they are afraid because you are strong?" "They are afraid because they made a mistake," Elena replied. "They thought that because we wanted peace, we could not make war. They thought that because we were kind, we were helpless. They learned that they were very, very wrong." She stood up and looked out at the stars visible even in the Martian daytime. "We hope we never have to fight like that again," she said. "But if anyone threatens our friends, threatens the innocent, threatens the people we have sworn to protect, then they will discover the same thing the old council discovered." She turned back to the young alien girl and smiled. "Humans remember," she said. "And humans answer." The girl nodded solemnly, as if she understood something important. Later that evening, Elena Vasquez returned to Earth. She stood on the balcony of her office and watched the sunset over New Snow Paulo. The city that rose from the ashes of the old was beautiful and strong. Its towers reached toward the sky like fingers of hope. Its streets were filled with humans and aliens living side by side in peace. She thought about the journey humanity had taken, from frightened prey to masters of their own destiny. She thought about the price they had paid and the responsibilities they had accepted. The galaxy was watching them, some with hope and some with fear. Humanity would have to prove every day that power did not corrupt, that they could remain true to their values even as their strength grew. It would not be easy. There would be challenges ahead, old enemies seeking revenge and new threats emerging from the darkness between stars. But Elena Vasquez believed in her species. She believed in their capacity for both fierce protection and gentle compassion. She believed they would build something beautiful among the stars. She raised a glass to the darkening sky, to the distant point of light where the Nemesis crew had given their lives. "We will make you proud," she promised. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, the spirit of humanity burned bright, a light of hope for all who had lived too long in darkness. The new dawn had come.